So there we have it, the end of 2017. What an amazing year it's been, and I can't thank you all enough for your incredible support throughout the year. It's always greatly appreciated. So let's end the year with our annual If Not For Me ending compilation. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions in 2018? Also, if you enjoyed the videos, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me... for face reveals in the coming year. If not for me... for redefining elite. If not for me... for more power. If not for me... for having everything go as planned, I think. If not for me, for being so close. If not for me, for Domino Squad. If not for me, to save Padme. If not for me, for coming this fall. If not for me, for the greater good. If not for me, for increased firepower. If not for me, for Zam Wessel. If not for me, for ask and you shall receive. If not for me, for technique. If not for me, for Dirge's Lance. If not for me, for Gold Squadron. If not for me, for having no regret. If not for me, for what side are they really on? If not for me, for dark side corruption. If not for me, for peace. If not for me, for ancient Sith. If not for me, for Clone Commando Gregor. If not for me, for learning to say I'm sorry. If not for me, for nostalgia. If not for me, for bounty hunter assassin. If not for me, for amorphous blood. If not for me, for regrets. If not for me, for Grand Admiral Badge. If not for me, for unknown region origins. If not for me, for Scimitar Assault Bombers. If not for me, for at least the prophecy was fulfilled. If not for me, for Cuddles. If not for me, for Seething Rage. If not for me, for Absolute Loyalty. If not for me, for Marka Ragnos. If not for me, for rising to the challenge. If not for me, for Lobot. If not for me, for scapegoats. If not for me, for good days and bad days. If not for me, for the Twilight. If not for me, for Admiral Mahdi. If If not for me, for I wish we could just ask the God Emperor. If not for me, for Oren Yeager. If not for me, for preparation. If not for me, for Green Leader. If not for me, for friends in high places, and enemies too. If not for me, for being so close. If not for me, for astromech droids. If not for me, for what a jerk. If not for me, for penance. If not for me, for G8R3. If not for me, for Bear Clan. If not for me, for aspirations. If not for me, for crossguard lightsaber variants. If not for me, for did you find any droids? If not for me, for proteges. If not for me, for awkward. If not for me, for everything proceeding as planned. For some. If not for me, for knowing when to say I'm sorry. If not for me, for learning from the mistakes of others. If not for me, for what were you all thinking? If not for me, for Lan Evervillishan. If not for me, for legally confused Jedi. If not for me, for secular class Star Destroyers. If not for me, for peacekeeping. If not for me, for this. If not for me, for Saber Kings. If not for me, for the Dark Holocron. If not for me, for art. If not for me, for Nick Rostu. If not for me, for where you see darkness, I see stars. If not for me, for Jedi battle droids. If not for me, for epic Sith duels. If not for me, for alliances. If not for me, for the Lightspeed Panthers. If not for me, for invaluable astromech droids. If not for me, for maybe regretting the rescue. If not for me, for the Great Hyperspace War. If not for me, for having just a really bad day. If not for me, for incinerator wardrobes. If not for me, for good decisions. If not for me, for taking the time to do it right. If not for me, for still being behind X-Wing. If not for me, for trying to put a positive spin on things. If not for me, for deceptions. If not for me, for sentimentality. If not for me, for rebelling. No. There we go. If not for me, for superiority. If not for me, for the greatest duel ever. If not for me, for double-edged sword. If not for me, for regretting everything. If not for me, for I think canon kinda wins this one, but don't tell anybody. If not for me, for design similarity. If not for me, for authoring your own misfortune. If not for me, for forward-mounted adjustment knobs. If not for me, for the will of the Force. If not for me, for Raskta Lasso. If not for me, for complicated lightsaber lore. If not for me, for Komari Vosa. If not for me, for overcoming limitations. If not for me, for not believing things simply because the Jedi are unaware of them. If not for me, and oh my god, Kylo Ren's TIE silencer! If not for me, for wild cards. If not for me, if not for me, for everything being his fault. If not for me, for being a courageous warrior. If not for me, for Jedi restraint. If not for me, for being a top 5 Jedi Master of all time. If not for me, for Yinkori Stormtroopers. If not for me, for unorthodox careers. If not for me, for Sith psychiatry. If not for me, for house shopping. If not for me, for even more first impressions. If not for me, for Luke trying to go and do a thing that, if not for me, for getting the Yinkorian Jedi showdown anyway. If not for me, for cleansing the dark side of fools. If not for me, for being too eager to share your secrets. If not for me, for subtly manipulating political outcomes. If not for me, for
that name no longer has any meaning for me.
If not for me, for the ultimate expression of defense. If not for me, for good investments. If not for me, for advanced skills. If not for me, for sometimes just getting a bit lucky. If not for me, for believing the Battle of Coruscant actually went well. If not for me, for the Imperialis. If not for me, for letting go of your anger. If not for me, for humility. If not for me, for the progenitor. If not for me, for awkward reunions. If not for me, for Raylo. Alright. And Pordbaka. Aww. If not for me, for superior well-roundedness. If not for me, for Grumgar. If not for me, for Alexi Garin. If not for me, for how could it have been your greatest fear when you completely rejected that fear like a day earlier? If not for me, for becoming one with the Force. If not for me, for Secret Waterfall Jedi Academies. If not for me, for saving your apprentice from the embarrassment of capture. If not for me, for loss. If not for me, for visionary. If not for me, for jagged fell. If not for me, for the worst thing I've ever seen. If not for me, for no insiders ever questioning any of this. If not for me, for accepting bad advice from Sith Lords. If not for me, for Jedi artisans. If not for me, for the Chosen One. If not for me, for
not just the men, but the women and the children too.
If not for me, for Shatterpoints. If not for me, for Faye. If not for me, for Stygian-powered TIE Phantoms. If not for me, for one day being a Shatterpoint but then not so much. If not for me, for Sith rivalries. If not for me, for not quite preventing tragedy. If not for me, for Churrid impersonations. If not for me, for oversized A-Wings. If not for me, for being careful what you wish for. If not for me, for great fear and confusion. If not for me, for stage 2. If not for me, for giving the people what they want. If not for me, for TIE Sadlancers. If not for me, for Jedi wisdom. If not for me, for being hoisted by your own flying lightsaber contraption. If not for me, for Sith tragedies. If not for me, oh well, you know, I guess I could have zoomed in to see what these butterflies really were. Okay, here we go. Closer, closer.